My dad worked for Sears for about 40 years, so back then Sears was the place to shop. So he would bring home everything that was brand new, and the first thing I remember him bringing home was a TI 99 4A. It was kind of a Zork style game, so it was word based, but it was a pirate treasure game. I remember we had a tape deck off to the side that you would plug into the TI 99 4A and would make this fax machine sound as it was loading.
Oh man, earliest is Atari. My uncle had one, and I would play with him. Combat, Pac-Man, Pitfall, that type of stuff.
Playing Tetris and Super Mario Brothers with my dad. Basically the reason I have glasses. Played too much. But yeah, that's definitely my earliest.
I don't think that there are enough people out there who try and preserve the history of video games. I am a reseller, right? But we do try and preserve what we have and what we sell and sell it in better condition than we got it in if that's possible. But there are people out there that don't. I mean, they buy it, they flip it for $1. They don't care what it looks like, what it does, how they treat it. We're going to lose all of that history eventually, and in 3 generations, 4 generations, my kids will be playing Mario on some emulator or some, just download. Who knows? But yeah, I think that's kind of sad.
I'm completely fine with it. I'm fine with emulation. I'm fine with whatever. It's the fact of the matter is, the games are made to be played, no matter what medium or form they're played in. They're meant to be played.
I'm confident that this stuff will work itself out where appropriate. Where there's someone out there who just needs to know. Think about emulators and the hobbyist emulator scene and people that are just doing that stuff just to do it, just because they care about that stuff and want to know.
To me, there's something about playing on original hardware, original controller. It feels different to play Mario Brothers on a Nintendo versus playing it on a Wii. So they're a good way to let people experience it and kind of make them aware of the existence of it. Ultimately, you're going to have to preserve not only the video games, but you're also going to have to preserve the TVs that they're played on. The GunCon 2s, 1s, they only work with CRTs. The Zapper, if you have a plasma, then you can't enjoy Duck Hunt. So there's a lot out there. There's a lot of TVs. Will they disappear entirely? Eventually, sure. I don't know what you can do. You can keep one, but there's only so much you can do before you can't get parts for it, or before someone's like, it's not worth fixing. Just buy a new TV. So just as a society, we've just been programmed to, if it's broken, don't fix it, just buy another one. So I think that needs to be realized.
The difficulty comes in the fact that they're scarce. There's a finite amount. They're not being made anymore. They're not being manufactured. So the question really is there a way to ramp up production on any of it? And there's a few things that are happening right now in the world that are making those dreams possible, but they fringe on the idea that it's not the original, it's not the actual physical original. So there has to be a concession, and I think that's where people need to meet, is the fact that these aren't made by the actual company anymore. We have the technology to rip, reprint, and remake, so we need to use that.
One of my co-workers here, the guy who does all of our repairs, does that in his spare time as well, and I buy a few of those from him. And a lot of the Facebook groups that I'm joined to, and a lot of my friends and collectors and customers who come in they're technical enough to do that kind of stuff, and I don't see the real harm in it. I think maybe if we were trying to sell them as the official product, then I would see some kind of harm. But some of the companies, Nintendo, some of the other companies, sometimes they don't like what you do. Just kind of depends on how old it is and what it is, I think, is where we don't have as many issues.
Whether the companies themselves retaliate it's going to happen. I mean, it's going to happen with anything. But it's just, they have to figure it out. What extent do they want to retaliate against the 15-year-old kid who's got the computer who can reprint SNES games? So in the end, it's good for everybody. Whether the companies sue people or they don't, whether people make tons of new games or they don't, the fact of the matter is that there's this focus on vintage games again.
Eventually, similar to the Atari, it reached a point where everyone had everything they wanted. Nintendo collecting, Sega collecting may reach that point at some time, but it seems like there's more content in those systems, and it keeps repeating with the Wii, the Wii U, to where I believe a lot of people will continue to collect those.
Older systems, cartridge-based systems, short of filling them with cement, are gonna always work. There's no moving parts. There's no, real crazy technology in there that's hard to figure out. So a lot of people just think that because it's old, it's done.
Capacitors, right? We're always doing capacitor replacements. Once they got into the laser era, there was a group of them that the lasers started to fail a lot. And so those are a little harder to come by now. They make some lasers, but some you have to find. You just have to buy a $500 system and rip the laser out of it. But that's about it. There's really, if you kept those cartridge games clean and the systems clean, they're still running today just as well as they were back then.
Any of the companies that are defunct, NEC TurboGrafx is one that I hold dear to me. It's a great system, but there's not a current company supporting it. And those systems are just horribly bad about capacitors. And if they sit, the longer they sit unused, the worse they get, to the point where they're not salvageable.
Arcade cabinets take up a lot of space. I don't think anyone would argue if they walked into a arcade with 6 MAME cabinets that had 1,600 games a piece on them. I don't think anybody would argue. Would we love to have an arcade that had 1,600 games in it? Sure, I'm pretty sure it would look amazing. It'd be fun, but cost-effective wise, it just doesn't work. Plus with strains on electricity, with strains on small business owners, because that's what arcade owners are. They're small business owners. So if they can fit 500 games in one game and have it take the same electrical cost as a single arcade cabinet, it makes sense to. And if that's the steps we need to take to get arcades back or to keep the arcades we have, then I think it's completely fine. I don't think accurate depiction is really a term to be used with MAME. I think it's as true a form as we can get, especially in the society where buying things and repopulating and occupying a space is important.
That's a tougher one for us because it's a more expensive one. 2, they fail a lot more. So that is one of those things that I definitely think they should be preserved. We think of them as everything else that we do in video games. It's just a bigger, more expensive toy to kind of keep a hold of, keep prepared.
I have a bunch of CPS2 boards that are slowly dying because they have a battery in them that acts as the protection. And when the battery dies, it eventually erases the protection chip, so the board just doesn't work anymore. And you're supposed to send it into Capcom and have them replace it, but they don't offer that service anymore.
It's all customer knowledge. A lot of people don't understand that these things still exist. A lot of people think that these things are relics. On the flip side of that, a lot of people think that just because it has Mario or Sonic on it, it's worth $1 million. So, we're here in a role to educate people. You don't have to sell me your stuff. You don't have to buy my stuff. But if you have questions, I'd love to answer them. If you have things you need fixed or things you don't think work, bring them in and we'll make them work again.
I think we have a big role. I didn't see that in the very beginning when we first opened the store. I pretty much saw it as an escape. I think the store now has a pretty decent role, pretty big role in preservation, especially of the classics. People will come here to find a game that even if it's not I don't know if it's a classic or not. Let's say like original Xbox games. So we try our best to keep original artwork, original books, things like that, all with those style of games. Now it's harder to do with some of the cartridge-based games, Super Nintendo, NES, N64, Genesis, because those boxes in a lot of cases were made of cardboard and they were either originally tossed or they were just destroyed. So we try, if we can preserve anything. I've got a drawer full of stuff behind the camera here that's just nothing but instruction manuals. So when those come in, we don't toss them. We don't toss our DS cases. We try to keep everything the way it was originally, the way it was intended to be presented.
I bring back a lot of dead. A lot of my experience from collecting is transferred over to what I do now. I find something for cheap because it's broken and try to figure out what's wrong and find a common issue with those systems. And I share that with the people that bring in their systems with similar issues. So bringing something like a Nintendo, very simple, blinking red light. Well, normally it's a 72-pin connector. Okay, it's easy fix. And by doing that, you can enjoy your system instead of spending an hour trying to get it to just read Mario.
I don't think that there's a danger of them disappearing. I think there's a danger in how we experience them disappearing. I think that, especially with Microsoft, a year and a half ago at E3, saying this is our Xbox One, and you buy a game, you can't share it, you can't trade it, everything turning digital. I think there's that danger. I think that the game should be the persons who bought it. I know they didn't create it, but I think that they should have ownership after they've spent their $60 or whatever it is. And I think Microsoft, in some regards, I think Sony's trying to eventually take that away from us, and I don't like that.
I think eventually digital download only is just gonna happen. Cost-wise, it just makes sense for a company just to release their intellectual media and not have to have some sort of vessel to transport it or distribute it. And I think eventually it's gonna move that way.
Some of these games are going to be difficult or impossible to preserve. I mean, right now, games that are a year old, it's hard to find people playing them online. You could theoretically get enough consoles and other stuff together to play them online with your friends and make it all work. They still work, but you can see that stuff drying up. We have to let go of that to some extent and trust that down the line, some enterprising lunatic will figure out a way to make all that stuff work again.
A lot of people do see it as clutter because, like you pointed out earlier, there's a virtual console now. You could have 10,000 games on this little box, and that's great for space, but I could help you towards archiving those games, or and if you're gonna throw it away anyway, someone else can use it. The whole everyone's trash is someone else's treasure situation, and that goes with anything, not just video games, not just toys. It goes with anything.
Go in your attic if you know they're there. Take them down. I mean, it's your childhood, and it's even better if you have kids. I know I have kids, and I know I will share some of the stuff that I have. I don't have anything in the attic anymore, but from this store as they start to get to that age. But take that stuff down. Hook it back up. Play with it. Clean it. I mean, it's still great fun. Some of the games from the past are a lot better than the games from today. I mean, they're a lot harder, a lot more difficult, but they'll make you laugh. They'll make you have a great time with your family. I think that's what you should do with them. And then if that's not your thing, bring it into a place that will take good care of it. Even though they're going to resell it, they're going to take good care of it, fix it up, do whatever, and then pass it on to another generation.
Play your games. They're not shelf trophies. I mean, if it works, play it. They were built to be beaten on and played, and enjoy them, play them.
I think we have to take a step back and realize that these were someone's blood, sweat, and tears. This was someone's sleepless night. This was someone's divorce. This was someone's escape from reality. We need to give it that respect. It's not It's not that we're taking away from any other art form or trying to add to this. It has that rich culture already. It has that rich history. We just need to bring it forefront. And, you can explain a video game in different terms to someone and not say it's a video game, and they'll be totally engaged. The minute you say video game, they discount it. And that shouldn't be. It's someone's creation.